Okay, I think I am live here. I don't know how it is streaming at the moment since I am pretty much trying all of this for the first time. So I am hoping some of you might be able to hear me. I would appreciate if you can kind of give me a feedback whether you can hear me or not. Awesome, Ted. I'm glad you were able to make it. I know you had a couple of other things going on, but I just wanted to, try this thing out, and I'm glad to have a familiar face. So I'm a bit all scattered here since this is my very first stream that is somewhat scheduled. So I'm going to have to kind of work this out and see how it all works together. So if you see something that you shouldn't, or if you don't see something that you should, then just let me know. I got a feedback saying it is a bit quiet, so I'm gonna try and increase my volume a little bit and see if that helps. Yeah, I just love, having somebody there monitoring stuff for me because it seems all fine to me, but you never know how it is going to be. So I didn't even manage to get all the lighting correct. Give me a second. The plan was to do all of this at the late night so that kids are all asleep. But of course, um, when they want you around, it's hard to leave and have them sleeping by themselves. So, um, I've got several topics that I actually wanted to go through. This is just a very first series of this live stream type of episode that I'm doing. I thought this would be a good opportunity to engage to the my viewers and the audience, and I just wanted this occasion to be sort of casual and perhaps some discussion. In the future, I want to have some discussions about anything AEC, TAC, and my personal life as well as yours, and just kind of discuss. I don't know, just have a good time, and there's a community here, so I'm hoping to just kind of build some sort of discussion base or team or community, however you call it. And today I just kind of titled this sort of live stream as SketchUp versus Revit, but it could be really anything. I just kind of put down most clickbaity type of title that I can think of, but also I think it's worthwhile talking about. So that is the, I guess, main topic, and then I don't mind talking about some other things. If you have any questions, just put it down in the chat, and I'll be happy to discuss those things. I just want this to be more sort of ongoing kind of discussion rather than just me talking the whole time. I don't necessarily have a presentation ready or anything like that, so I just want to openly speak. We'll see how all of this goes. I'm gonna have to feel it out. Is basically what I'm trying to plan out for this session here. It will be just about an hour, is what I'm thinking. If there is enough interest, it could be shorter, it could be longer. We'll see how it goes. Um, So the official title of the series is, I'm just calling it Let's Talk Tuesday, because at least in my time, it's Tuesday, 9 p.m. CST. I'm based in Nashville, Tennessee, so that's how I'm gonna roll, since I can put most of the kids to bed and just kind of have this session in a bit more quietness, unless they just open the door and just come in since they woke up or something like that. So hopefully it is okay time for you. Perhaps not the perfect time. I know I'm probably gonna miss everyone in Europe, but yeah, this is the only time I think it's feasible for me. So let me know what just kind of time works for you. If you have any other opinion, I'm open to suggestion. Again, I just thought Tuesday kind of works out, but obviously I can't fit everyone's time, so we'll just kind of roll as is. Um, so this is just meant to be anything about AEC. So ongoing, I have some plans to talk about all the tech that I cover on AEC, as well as some of hardware, software, or maybe some tech related news and how it applies to us as an architect or engineer and people in construction. And obviously, they're all sort of related industries out there: interior design and 3D modeling, or maybe product design or stage design. All the people who kind of enjoys the 3D modeling, visualization, or BIM or anything like that, I'll be sort of open to talk about. So here I'm just reading in the chat. Matt's here. AH-LP. Hi, Matt. Hi. I got one message that's restricted or retracted from Van. Well, everybody, thank you for joining in. Yeah, I'll be open to any questions. So if you have AC tech or any sort of personal question too, I don't mind answering. So I want you guys to just kind of openly chat and ask and continue this discussion. So please feel free to just jot down anything that you would like me to talk about. And also, I will take any topic suggestions. So let me just kind of move on to more general topic that we decided to talk about. So I'm going to start with presenting perhaps Google page. And the screen is probably a bit too tiny here, so let me just go ahead and make it slightly bigger. Maybe that's slightly better. So I wanted to first just kind of get down to what SketchUp is and also Revit is. First, SketchUp is something that is sort of dear to my heart. Just going over my background, I think in my school I started off as AutoCAD first. Obviously, we are taught to do hand drawings first, and then later on, you were introduced to some means of software, whether it be AutoCAD or SketchUp or Revit or ArchiCAD, any sort of those CAD-based softwares you were introduced to. And for me, my choice was briefly with AutoCAD and then quickly to SketchUp. And that's how I kind of picked up my very first sort of CAD-based software. And ever since, I have been using it quite diligently, I would say. And I feel like I've reached some level of confidence where I can quite use it well, and maybe enough to teach as well. But also during my coursework and college days, I also picked up Revit. So I knew very little of it, and I can probably do most of the things on SketchUp anyways. So a lot of coursework I did with SketchUp, but I knew always kind of how to use Revit, and also going into actual professional work. I started using more Revit and understood or later learned how to synchronize or work in a bigger firm and do a task that is assigned to me, and learned how all sort of BIM coordination or management is done. And later, I also took a role where it is a bit more BIM management role. Therefore, I oversaw all the drawing process as well as creating different type of families and managing them. So I took a bit of BIM management as well. I wouldn't say I am very confident. There's a lot more people who's a lot more savvy than I am. I take no part in programming or dynamo type of workflow. So I would say my knowledge in Revit is limited in that aspect, but I know it good enough to kind of teach other people, at least solely just on the Revit drawing parts, as well as just kind of rolling things out to the firm wide as a BIM manager type of role. I'm not officially a BIM manager, but I do take part in it. So that's my background in terms of SketchUp and Revit. And because of my experience in both Revit and SketchUp, I have been able to just kind of import, export a lot of data and information between successfully in a way that it makes the whole process a lot more streamlined. And a couple of processes I have introduced on my channel so that other people could kind of see that process and enjoy as well. So hopefully, some people are also benefiting from those type of workflow. But I just wanted to discuss this because there's a lot of people out there saying, SketchUp is the ultimate tool and Revit is the ultimate tool. And I can't really say that is true because it really is a tool, and you just pick up the right tool for the right task. And I think at the end of the day, it's most meaningful if you have variety of tools available for yourself and that you're able to use, you're skillful enough to use, and then pick up the tool that is most efficient for the task that you are assigned to do, or your client works for that case. So I wanted to just kind of openly talk over those things. I have some question here. I got one about the MSI Creator Monitor. Did you like it while using it? I absolutely did. It's just jumping topic a little bit here, but that is a monitor that I have reviewed on this channel, and yeah, I really liked it. There were two different monitors, so I don't know which one you're talking about. There's one that is ultra wide, and then there's a wide monitor that was 4K. One was 5K, I believe. And I liked both of them. They were very color accurate, and I would recommend it only if your pocket could afford, or if your wallet could afford it. Actually, that's interesting, Ted, to start your career with MicroStation. That was something that I was briefly exposed to, and I never went back. So I don't, I don't really know all that well. But SketchUp is definitely very intuitive software, as you said. So picking up, or that's some like sort of pro that I wrote down for SketchUp, is the fact that there's sort of benefit in interface and ease of use type of thing. So there's definitely that learning curve that's gonna stop you, or perhaps frighten you a little bit when you were to pick up Revit, whereas SketchUp, everything is quite visual, intuitive. Therefore, the learning curve is easy. I think a lot of education for kids, SketchUp is used in that way so that people can quickly model things or see things, and being able to create things in 3D space at such ease is something I think beneficial to all ages. So I pro that, or I recommend SketchUp in that aspect. Um, I got a question from Victor. I see that Ted is trying to answer some of those questions, but hi, Enscape is made mainly for SketchUp. At Revit needs some improvements in the editor, the material editor, and some other features. I think that was somewhat true. I would say it is not necessarily made for SketchUp. I think it is just made for all softwares or CAD based or 3D modeling softwares out there. But there were some benefits coming from SketchUp side. I would say also the material editor, just because how SketchUp's API is a lot easier than the Revit side, where for you to change the materiality on Revit, first you've got to apply with parametric values, either be paint or material that's assigned to the geometry, or it's a bit convoluted to put materials on Revit. Excuse me. And to manage that, there's appearance section, there's a physical appearance that you need to manage inside of Revit, and Revit has its own material sort of dialogue and library that you need to separately manage too. Therefore, when it comes to materiality, it just is not easy, and that is to same for any sort of softwares that are rendering softwares that are out there. You need to work extra hard for that to be working inside of Revit. So um, I think that is more so because how the software is actually made, and that was one of my point that I just jot down as well. The fact that SketchUp is very visual, and you're meant to do a lot of visual work, meaning sketching maybe because it's SketchUp and where the name comes from. Quickly jot down your visual sort of ideas, concepts, things like that. So it's meant to be a bit quick, easier to learn, um, but not necessarily as much detail, not necessarily a lot of information or building information management, and hence why Revit is just the king for that sort of aspect, where documentation, drawings, and information, all of those are very detailed and quantifiable, and there's a lot of nitty gritty things that you could get into to utilize those things. But when it comes to rendering, it's visual. Therefore, I think the things for you to utilize are a lot more available, as well as easier access inside of SketchUp. Just not on interface wise, not only just interface wise, but also like API or what the software developers such as Enscape could utilize. So I think that is not necessarily what Enscape is made for, but more of how both of the softwares are made differently for a different type of purpose. That is not to say you cannot do visual stuff on Revit. You can, but it is just a bit more difficult. It takes a bit more time. Same thing for SketchUp. If you were to do drawings or quantifiable data, you can, but it's a bit more convoluted to embed that, and you're probably going to end up spending a bit more time than you would inside of Revit. So that is actually a very good question, and it led me to a lot of good thoughts and things that the topics here. Um, yeah, and I think Ted has kind of mentioned that too, lockdown and API. Yeah, so we're preaching the same thing. Um, do you have any documentation, add-ins, conduct tools? I briefly looked at conduct tools, but again, that is trying to overlap a lot in aspect of what I'm able to do with Revit. Conduct tool is, really good extension that is out there. So, kudos to people who's using it. And, if you want to stay within that realm, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, there's price to these software. So, if you're invested in SketchUp side, if you can just invest a little more on conduct tools and stay within all SketchUp, then I don't see why not, because conduct tool can actually help you those documentation. But if you have both SketchUp and Revit, then I would rather jump on Revit to do a lot of those documentation type of thing. There's a quantifier pro that's available from Mindsight Studio. I have used it several times as well. So that is really good for quantifying the things that you have inside of your model. SketchUp natively handles some of those aspects, but quantifier can actually do a lot of things that you're not easily doable inside of SketchUp natively. So I have one question here. Osusama. Sorry, I'm probably not saying your name correctly. Good evening. SketchUp for me have two problems: poor big geometry handling, and how in the earth they didn't add tools along all of this years to draw organically. Well, I would say you're trying to approach it from more complex type of geometry, organic type of geometry. Obviously, there are different tools available that are great at handling huge amount of geometry as well as drawing organically. SketchUp is started off as more orthogonal type of modeling and drawing. Obviously, you're meant to draw cubes or triangles and push pull, and that's it. Whereas, if you were to try and push pull off of a curve, you start to introduce all sorts of weird things, and obviously it is possible, but it becomes really complex. And I think a lot of those are handled really well in other type of software, such as Rhino, or if you were to combine Rhino, Dynamo, and Revit, you can handle a lot of those things quite easily parametrically. And obviously, that's just another type of tool that we have to introduce into equation. I think if we were to introduce a lot of those complexity tools inside of SketchUp, I think the learning curve would be higher or much more steep than what it actually is right now. So, yeah. But again, there are quite a lot of tools out there to do some complex modeling, which I enjoy parametrically too. So, it is not to say it is easy, but it is somewhat available. Thomas says he has to leave, but my channel gives a good perspective for students and professionals and manage workflows. Well, thank you so much for your feedback. I understand it is a bad time for some people. So, and probably for me as well. So I appreciate you just chiming in and letting me know. So, You can perhaps watch this as a recording too. Thank you. Is there a good workflow for using SketchUp and Revit together? Actually, there are several workflows that I have introduced on my channel, going either to SketchUp from Revit or Revit to SketchUp. So you can kind of search that, but I should just kind of discuss on here because that is the topic. Let me go ahead and pull up some of example models that I have. So the way I prefer to take Revit model into SketchUp is usually by DWG format, and same thing for going from SketchUp to Revit, only because for the longest time, they just don't take the current version of SketchUp. There was one time, I think, where stars lined up. I think it was like Revit 2019 version took SketchUp 2019 version. So that year, at beginning of the year, I think, things were a bit easier going back and forth. And as soon as one version or one software moved up in terms of version, yeah, things became not as easy anymore. And the workflow is, again, different depending on which way you're going. There's not like a single solution out there. But what I tend to do is, rather than clump up entire 3D model from the Revit side, going into SketchUp, I try to break it in terms of category, so that you can isolate a lot of things different inside of SketchUp. So let me just share my screen briefly so that you guys kind of see what I'm talking about. So this is freshly released Revit 2022. So if I were to export this model, I probably don't need, the sort of people representation, RPC families, or the trees or furniture is necessary. I probably need most of the walls and such. So what I typically do is I just select the wall, and then here I go to isolate category. And once you're in there, right now I'm just showing only the walls that are available in here. And I go to File, Export, and then CAD Formats and DWG. And then I would look at some of the settings out here. One of the good ones is a solid. If I were to output as ACES or ACI as solids, things tend to come in a bit cleaner. If it's a very complex type of geometry that you're bringing in, you may actually see benefit bringing polymesh, just because it will break if it was to output the solids. But in this case, it's not as complex, so I would do that for the walls, and then OK. And also, you might look at the units and coordinates, because this is something that you want to keep in mind. Revit has very complex coordinate system, and whatever you decide to choose, and there's other talks or YouTube videos out there that talks about these shared coordinates and different type of origin or coordinates that are available. And I would suggest you take a look. It's completely bonkers how they configure this. And every time I have to double check what I'm doing. But whatever you decide to do, you stick to it throughout the entire lifespan of the project is what I kind of learned. That way, both of the models are coordinated on the same spot. When you're bringing in, make sure that origin is checked on SketchUp side, as well as when you're bringing in. Therefore, every geometry comes in the right spot without you adjusting it. You do not want to adjust scale or move or anything like that. You want to make sure models show up on the correct spot whatever the software that you're using. So that is worth taking a look. If your internal origin is like miles away, you probably want to look at a shared coordinate system as well. That's something that I've done before. Again, I'm no expert in this matter, but I know enough to know that that is something very important. So with that, okay, and then I can just next this, and it's gonna pop up one more dialog after this. So I can go to desktop, and then I'm just gonna say this is a wall. So I usually just give a number because later revision I may add or take out a wall so that I just update that file if I need to, and then uncheck this dialog here or the checkbox here, and then okay. And then it is going to mean, hey, I got temporary hide isolate mode right now. Would you like to keep it? Yes, leave the temporary. And in that case, if we jump right back to the desktop, now I've got this DWG file, which I can now import into SketchUp. So here, file, import, and then I'll just choose that and close. So voila, it just came in, and it's got all sorts of different colors that you may or may not want. So what I typically do is, aside from deleting the template stuff, actually I select all of this. And then one of the favorite extension that I have, this is from TomTom, I believe, Material Tools. Here I select that and then remove from selection. What this does is, before I perform that, inside of this SketchUp, because I brought all of these materials in, there are all of these unique materials that are assigned to this geometry. Often I want to play all of this separately. I guess you could kind of go and say, hey, this was the concrete or brick or whatever that may be. So you can start to bring in different type of texture if you wanted to. However, I find that a bit more, I would say, convoluted. So I like to start from clean slate so that I can control. I have a bit more control. You could have a lot more materials that are being used for the model than 1, 2, 3, 4 different type of colors. So if you want to start from the clean slate as I do, then I go to extensions, material tools, remove from selection, and then this becomes basically the clean slate, the white. And it just assigns the default material, which is this one here. So in that case, I can go ahead and delete all of these materials, or I can actually undo that and go to, I believe it is purge all. So this is another extension from, oh gosh, TIG, TIG, purge all plugin or extension. It's my favorite. It's so good that I have it assigned as Shift 0. So I usually don't even go here. So Shift 0, and at this point it's going to ask me which I want to. I usually keep everything yes and okay, and then it will go ahead and remove all of those materials. So it just came in as the most clean materiality possible. And if I go down to the layers, these are the layers that are being used by these wall category. And because this is all isolated into one group, I can actually merge this. I may do this material or layer or tag removing after all import process, just so that I understand what is going on exactly on the model. But from there, I would go ahead and delete tags. That way it just goes all back into untags. It's because some of the raw geometry, the edges or faces, can belong to different type of ones, and sometimes that doesn't give you expected results when these things just kind of start to blend to each other. So the sort of best practice is to just kind of delete and nuke everything is what I kind of learned. And because all of these are coming in as solids, basically all of these members came in as an individual component. And because they're components, you can easily push pull if you wish to, or modify the thickness so that you can assign different type of material. So that's how I would go about. And again, just to kind of proof of concept, I know we don't want to spend too much time, but I can reset temporary on the Revit side. And then again, just select the roof or maybe ceiling or something like that, and then isolate category. The same practice here. And now I've got these two geometries, and same thing. I usually assign Control E for exporting, or Control 3 for exporting DWG, but I believe I don't have all the short keys assigned. Let me actually do that since this is a brand new version of Revit that I'm using. So let me go to my own library. So I have the shortcuts. Okay, overwrite. All right. So if I were to do Control E, this Dwg Export dialog shows up. Same thing, I'm just going to go briefly check. It should take what I had assigned before, so I don't need to mess with this. Okay, and then next, and then I'm just going to assign desktop. This time I'm just going to call it the roof 01 again, and then uncheck this dialog. Okay, and it becomes a little bit quicker than as I had to explain last time. And then here, again, Control I for import, and then go to roof. You want to take a look at the option if you wanted to, but make sure this one is checked. Preserve drawing origin. That's what it was kind of important when we were discussing about coordinates and origin. Merge coplanar faces, you may check that if you want. Orient face consistently if you want. Import material if you want, but it's not terribly important for my practice because I'll be assigning material separately inside of SketchUp anyways. I'm nuking all of those anyways. So import, and as I do that, it should all come in on the correct spot. So notice how everything is coming in consistently. Again, I may just go ahead and nuke this material. Since it's just only one, I can just go ahead and delete that and it'll do the same thing. But again, at the end of all of those importing, I can go and delete off of that, and then again run the purge once more so that I purge everything, as well as deleting that roof tag. I want to minimize the amount of tags that I have, or the layers that I have inside of SketchUp, because it really quickly gets out of hand. But again, it is all isolated as a group. Now, if I really want to kind of separate between this one versus that one, I can actually explode this. Now that roof has been isolated from that one, but I can visually tell that is a roof. And also because this is a group, I can quickly hide or unhide so that look in underside of the roof, all of that becomes quite easy. And I typically put roof on one tag just so that I can easily get into looking inside of a building. Ceilings, roof, I usually put them on the same tag or layer just so that I can quickly take a look inside. And also controlling by the tags, or just visually isolate so that I can just hide that easily. So yeah, that is the process of bringing stuff inside to SketchUp from Revit. As to how I would export into Revit, so let's say quickly, I'm just gonna draw something. Let's say we've got this new building that is coming in on this side. Let's make some geometry. and make that into a group. And in this case, I'm just going to hide all of this so that this is solely existing within the space on the correct spot. And then I may assign some material. I know material is not going to carry in as nice, but I just wanted to show you how that comes in. And behavior might actually be slightly different on Revit 2022 version, since they both like versioning up and just making other versions obsolete. Export 3D model. I have a shortcut of Control 3 for exporting a 3D model, and you can do DWG, but I'm gonna attempt, and if this works, the workflow becomes a lot streamlined. So you can actually save as just regular SketchUp file, and Revit often takes that, but there's a little trick to it. So first I'm gonna attempt something that I'm hopeful for, which is right now I'm saving as SketchUp 2021 version, and then I'm just gonna say this is a new mass. And I wasn't planning on doing all of this, so I will make mistakes since this is live show, and please don't yell at me for this. But here, and I have exported that. Let's just confirm on the desktop. I've got something called new mess, and if I were to go manage, and then insert, and then import CAD, or I can actually link CAD as well. So in here, I'm just gonna, SketchUp is understood as CAD, sorry, not CAT. And then this dialog shows up, and I would rather link so that I can keep it basically updatable. I can update those files as the massing changes or more detail gets applied. So here I'm looking for a SketchUp file. Revit is friendly enough to include a SketchUp file here, but we'll see, fingers crossed. Origin to origin, again, the coordinate is important, open, and linked file could not be located. It's because this is 2021 version. Last time I checked, it only takes like 2019 version. So I need to back save this. So save as, again, here, and then on SketchUp side, you want to back save it. I believe it was 2019 or 18. Let's try 19. All right, so we're going to save it as 2019. Okay, and then here, again, link CAD. I hope this works. There you go. So if you back save it to 2019, this works, and it comes in as pinned. So if you want to move it, you can move it, but I advise you just keep it as it is. And as for the material, you can actually check SKP filter. And then here, that's how it came in. Stone vein gray is how it came in. And currently you can see, if you look at the appearance, it's not taking any of those textures, so you can apply different type of texture if you want that to be orange. Okay, let's assign this, okay, that the appearance would be orange, but I didn't change it in graphics. Again, this is the convoluted aspects of Revit material library. So I can use a render appearance, apply, and when I apply that, again, that changed to orange. So that's all great. So that's how I would go about bringing certain type of thing. If this was a bit more complex, again, if it's some sculpture that you just can't really model inside of Revit, or if it is type of studies that you're doing, at least it will have the coordinates correct, and the hidden stuff that is here that I have imported are gonna be not shown here. So that way you can go back and forth, and when you update this thing like to a different shape or size, let's say I wanted to reduce that height here, and then now I just back save to 2019 version because Revit doesn't like the new, they like to live in 2019. Save that, yes, replace that, and then because I have linked it, if I go to manage links, CAD formats, and here I can reload. As soon as I reload, that should change. There you go. And again, the material now switched over. Either it reset or they created a brand new material now. So that's again a sort of a bug or unintended behavior of a software because that is not being used anywhere. Delete that, and I can reassign this to a different one. And that's why going back and forth is somewhat painful. But yeah, that's available. Sorry, I missed a lot of context here because I went on, but hopefully that just kind of gives you how I go about importing, exporting. Obviously, it's not foolproof and also it's somewhat convoluted, but hopefully that is something that somebody can utilize. And I don't know, this bits and pieces kind of method work for me. Ted mentioned RVT2 SketchUp. I have tried it a little bit, but to me, I didn't, or again, it has a price tag on it rather than being able to utilize like the native methods. But that is something that other people could utilize. I don't know if it goes back and forth because I need to have a method that goes between two, not only one way. Something I haven't spent a huge amount of time investing on sort of third-party methods. Okay. So that was actually a question from Matt that I was trying to answer in a very, very, very long way. I apologize if it was too long. For classical architecture, which software do you prefer to model? I haven't done classical architecture much, or I haven't done at all, I would think. But if I were to do it, I've seen some people do it really well. I know there was people doing Notre Dame in both Revit and SketchUp side, so I'd say it's possible on either side. But if I were to do it, it might be easier on Revit if you were to just kind of be able to utilize some sort of point cloud type of thing, because Revit is a bit better handling point clouds because on SketchUp side, things have to be sort of mesh or surface material type of geometry. But in terms of putting details, it might be easier to put amount of geometry and details on SketchUp side. Again, because classical architecture tend to have a lot of repetition, so those things could kind of be worked out as like a family or component. So you kind of have to judge, what you are most savvy on. But right off the bat, without putting too much thought into it, I would probably start off on a SketchUp because you can easily block out things and then later put details. And if it needs to be carried into Revit for drawing purposes, you can do that. And again, use this type of method of carrying in as like a 3D geometry and put it into a certain type of family if you need to, and start detailing out and really working out drawings if you need to. So I would say maybe both, but I'm leaning a bit closer to SketchUp side. If you use plugins, you have enough tools, trust me. Yes, absolutely. Plugins and extensions are absolutely wonderful in SketchUp, and that's why it's one of its strong points. And I have to tell you, SketchUp has extensions and Revit has add-ins. They're wonderful add-ins that are available there too, but not many are free, or not many are easily available, let's say. Whereas on the SketchUp side, there are just always some sort of free method or free extension method to use. Whereas in Revit, you may be paying a bit. It could be like $1 or $2 or $10 or $20 a year type of thing, but I don't want to pay out of my own pocket for company work, and getting an approval for a company for that small amount of money for seemingly not necessary for whomever managing me or managing the team is another hassle that I don't want to go through, or is a bit more difficult to go through. I've been there, done that. Maybe some of you might be on the same boat, but for SketchUp side, because things are more free or more available for users, it works the wonders. If you know lots of programming, unlike me, and if you can utilize Dynamo yourself, then that would be your good alternate solution. But for me, I can't program. I've been putting that off for a long time. Maybe it's something that I need to pick up. I've been meaning to pick up, but I have failed several times already. So, if there's someone who wants to learn with me, I'm up for it. Either Ruby for SketchUp or Dynamo on Revit. I just need some guidance, I think. I think I have such a little programming foundation that every time I try something, it just breaks and doesn't work. Would you recommend Revit for designing interiors as opposed to SketchUp layout, creating construction document? For designing interiors, because it's much smaller scale and probably type of work that you get is not as big or complex scale. Excuse me. I think SketchUp layout in that case works out, and because you can quickly add materials and take out materials and such, it just becomes a bit more streamlined and easier, I would say, for interiors. That's coming from somebody who's doing interiors of space all inside of Revit right now in the day job. So if it is possible, yes, but for construction document, because it is a document and you need to have finished schedule and all sorts of different schedules depending on what your client need is, that also is a bit more hassle on SketchUp side, whereas in Revit things could be cleaned up and done a lot easier and in more native ways. So I've seen both cases, but for quick concepts and such inside of SketchUp, and then when it becomes really detailed quantity and details of like baseboard and how all the trim works meet, all of those details that you do, it might be easier on the Revit side. I would say both sides is pretty similar in that aspect, at least in my experience. Obviously it'll depend on where you're coming from and what your clients are expecting too. If they are really liking the word BIM in how all of your consultants are based on BIM, or if they're all CAD, then might as well just rely on a bit simpler SketchUp method, is some of the things to think about. Thank you for being so active on my chat, Ted. I'm gonna have to ask you to jump on my talks all the time. I appreciate. Yeah, and I see a bit. Sorry, I can't read every single comment, but I see Revit LT discussion here. So, price is another thing. SketchUp is, I understand. Let's check out their price plan because they change all the time, don't they? So, SketchUp price. So, both Revit and SketchUp has their own price plan. Revit price. I don't know why I'm searching Revit price, but price is such a big thing when it comes to, you know, firm-wide rollout of softwares and such, that it becomes your decision factor. Some firms have both, and don't care whom uses it, but you know, maintaining 2.5 grand a year software is a lot heftier than $700 a year software. And again, that comes down to the same question of like, okay, you're doing interior work and you can spend a bit more time on layout to do construction documents than off of $700 or maybe even $300 a year, then that's a whole lot better than 2.5 grand a year. Obviously, this is just Revit package. There's different type of packages that you can get. There's a BIM, the architecture AEC collection, and AEC collection is how much? 3.1 grand a year. So that is somewhat comparable in terms of like a high tier that. And then if you want a BIM 360 is something that I also want to get. And then you have to get, I think it's about 700 a year on top of this. So that if it's all cloud based. Yeah, so those things are definitely a big factor. And when you look at that fat price, then you tend to just kind of lean towards, hey, actually, can I get away with Revit LT? Stop Chrome. And Revit LT is a tenth of, if I'm not mistaken, is a fraction of that cost. It's comparable to SketchUp Pro. Here, it's $475 a year. So then it makes a bit more sense. But again, you can't really do, you can't run extensions or add-ins on Revit LT. So something like Enscape or different type of renderers that you want to run internal to Revit goes out the window. So that is definitely something you want to consider. If you, and also one of the things, there were days that I was using Revit LT for this very reason, and you cannot do anything besides in-place walls. You cannot do other type of in-place families. Now that I think about it, like I think you can still work with it, but there's a lot of limitation when it comes to Revit LT. So, you know, there's some limitation when it comes to it. So that's something that you want to consider. And I see that Ted has answered, yeah, the LT locks you out of any sort of add-ins that can potentially help all of your workflow. So I don't know. But again, to the same point, if you're using like a web version of SketchUp, you can't really use any of the extensions either. So I guess you've got to consider those aspects. But price is definitely a decision factor in this regard, even if it takes a little bit longer on SketchUp side to do documentation. If you can get away with $700 instead of 3 grand a year, you know, anyone can do that math. Oh, by the way, there was time of of me where I'm just signing up literally like a month. Like if I have a project that's gonna use Revit full time, then I'll just pay a month and then use it, and then I'll let it relapse as I finish up that project. That is something that I've done before. It's not pretty, but you got to do what you got to do. Yep, I feel you. I feel you, Matt. Having full version of Revit during the day, and then night when you flip up and just your side stuff, and LT is your only option because obviously you can't justify high cost. Yeah, it is a pain. Yeah, and you know, layouts, it does kind of lock up and lag in certain type of tasks, especially when it comes to very complex type of drawing. Again, it's not impossible, and there's some amazing architects and SketchUp advocates out there who's doing amazing stuff out of layout. I wouldn't say layout is limited in that aspect, but to me, it's not as streamlined when it comes to just nitty gritty documentation phase. And it's something that you just have to work through if you want to stick to that price plan. I realized I wasn't showing the capture of the screen. So here is what I was looking at. I'm so sorry. It's my first time doing stream. But yeah, SketchUp side here, I was just showing this plan here, $700 for a studio and $300 for a pro. And then the shop, the web only is 120. Whereas on Revit LT, it's 475 a year. And let me go back to where I had searched full fat Revit version. Here, 2.5 grand a year. So that's something that you have to consider. You're still with SketchUp 2018. I see. Yeah, so the perpetual license is another factor. Revit moved on. SketchUp also moved on. You want to hold on to those things for your dear life. Ever try Blender BIM? If it is a Blender, if it is BIM, I know those things, but Blender BIM, I haven't tried. I also don't know Blender as well. As far as I've gotten is to open a file, and render a few things, and that was pretty much it for benchmarking. I don't know how to use Blender. It feels very similar to Rhino days. Yeah, and I've heard many good things about Blender. Obviously, that is sort of hot potato at the moment for animation and rendering. And again, price is something that you'll benefit on that side. So that is something for you to consider if you were learning. And I pro all sort of ways to learn different type of tools so that it is available, and you know how to use it. And when your client or your employer needs it, then you have a good answer and you're a very skillful person, and you become that much more valuable asset. So, if I can set aside some time, I would like to pick that up too, along with the programming that I already mentioned. So we're coming an hour and 10-minute mark here in terms of this stream. I really enjoyed this sort of session. I wanted to just kind of have some discussion and talk about a few things. So I think unless there's some very intriguing questions, I'm gonna close out and perhaps say a few things so that we can continue this. I'm planning to have this session every Tuesday, and that's why I kind of called it Let's Talk Tuesday. And there are a couple of things that I want to discuss. First, the planned out topic, perhaps. I guess maybe we can continue this trend of versus series, laptop versus desktop in AEC. So I've always got questions. Hey, what's the best laptop for this and that? Hey, what's the best computer, best hardware for my stuff, the task that I do? Is a lot of questions that I get on my channel just because I do a lot of laptop reviews, but I would love to just kind of openly talk about them. And I have my favorite answer to that. I've said it a few times on my videos, but I wanted to discuss that in a more open format, and as like this sort of question and answer kind of session, as well as maybe down the line I can have some guest over and maybe Zoom call to somebody like a wonderful person, Ted here, and maybe have some, one-on-one expertise, chat, discussion type of thing. So is what I'm planning on for this series. And I also have a SketchUp / Enscape webinar. I think it is more of an Enscape webinar coming up. Let me do a little slot here. My webinar with Enscape is coming up. I really don't know the dates. So that is May 13th on Thursday. It's 12 p.m. CST. And both SketchUp team and me will be presenting on that webinar. So please go check that out. I believe there was a mail shot. Let me just leave a comment so you guys could also see. So let me leave a little shout out for that. So if you're interested in a bit more talk from me, you can certainly do that. Okay, sorry, here. Yeah, obviously these sort of session is just meant for us to just kind of geek out on whether it be software or hardware, anything like that. So if you have anything that you want to ask regarding hardware, obviously I'm not know-all, but also, I know a few things. So hopefully I'll be able to just kind of give you some insightful thoughts or advice, and I would learn things from you too. So that's what I'm hoping to do. Actually, one thing I kind of wanted to announce on the channel is the fact that I am going for ARE. So I've been putting off for a very long time since I graduated in 2012. I have attempted to take ARE exam once in London. It's a long story. We can get into that life story later in session, but I have failed, and that was before ARE 5.0. For those of you who know ARE exams, so along with a few things that I want to pick up, like Dynamo or programming or Ruby scripting, or what was another thing that I said I need to learn? A Blender. Like those things I want to learn, but again, another thing that I'm intending to do is getting certified architect or taking ARE exam. So if any of you are practicing in the States, or at least intending to practice in the States, so that you're intending to take ARE exams, shoot me an email or chat or comment later on the recording. I would love to chat, having a little bit of peer pressure, and along with peers who's also taking the exam. I think it would be good. I still don't know. I still don't have any specific plans, but at least I want to get started with in this year. Yeah, a lot of people avoid, but I think I need it to excel forward. And I want to be able to comfortably say, "Hey, I'm an architect, but I'm interested in tech," or I run our YouTube, so that we can just kind of have these casual talks. So, hopefully, I get certified, therefore I can openly talk about it rather than, "Hey, I'm just an architectural designer who doesn't have a stamp," kind of thing. So, yeah, I would like to jump on that. I'll perhaps follow up on that later. But I would love to discuss in that regard too, if that's something that you guys are also interested in. And again, some guests may happen for these series. And I'm also open to doing some maybe like unboxing. There are a few hardwares and stuff that I'm testing out right now. It may not be like completely AC related. That's why I don't want to have that on a live session, but if there is enough of interest, then I would I would do it. Your wife and you took them at the same time study. That works for you. Unfortunately, my wife is not architecture professional. Yeah, we can't take those exams, but I would love to have somebody nearby taking the exam. But again, it would be very unfortunate if somebody was next to me taking the exams with me, because I took more than 80 years. I've been putting off 80 years, so that meant that person had to put it off for 80 years as well. So it would be kind of sad if it was, actually, but hopefully I can pick that up. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It ran a little bit longer. Hopefully I just covered some of the things. Obviously this may not be once for the Revit versus a SketchUp topic. It may come back. We may talk it again, or it may be my regular recorded videos. But thank you for joining my session of this first lunch of the episode, and hopefully we'll follow up with a better series, and have all of your faces, or at least the chats again, so that we continue to discuss. I think I'm gonna sign off here. Thank you so much, and if you like these sort of contents, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I think you already are, but thank you so much for joining in, and I'll see you next time.